It is. It is. Yeah.
right? If you keep children safe, sometimes you can't keep the family together.
Unfortunately, that's true. In some cases, there's a lot of potential for damage if we're not really careful.
Yeah. Either way, somebody's going to get hurt.
Yes.
Is really what it's all about. If we can keep families from
In the elementary schools, early prevention, just things like giving them resources, providing information, as long if we can get it as early as possible.
Absolutely. Now, one of the myths out there about foster care, I think, is people think that your big goal is just to take kids away from their families.
It's true. There are all kinds of strange rumors out there. Like we get $5,000 per child that we bring into care. They call us baby snatchers, and it's really unfortunate because we do everything we can to prevent that. Our prevention and child protective services workers do everything they can if the child can't stay with their parents to place them with family and safety placements. We do everything we can to put children with relatives when they have to come into foster care. We work very hard to reunite, or at least to get them into custody or adopted by a family member if they can't go back to their parents.
So May is Foster Care Appreciation Month. And so for all of those of you out there who are part of the foster care services, whether you're working in foster care like Kathy is, or you're a foster parent, or doing respite care for foster care, or in the important work of prevention to keep from kids going in the system, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Now, Kathy, just so that folks know that you know what you're talking about, you've been doing this for a number of years, haven't you?
I have. I'm going on my 32nd year with Bedford County DSS. I actually started the prevention unit back in 1989.
Wow.
And then in 2000, I went into foster care.
Yeah. So in your role in foster care, what's your primary job?
Our primary job is to rehabilitate the children and families through the services they need and get them home.
So reunification,
Yes.
top priority,
Number one.
number one. But then there's an important number two behind that, and that is permanency for the child.
Yes, permanency for the child, and we hope if we can't get them home, it's through placement with a relative, so we can keep that family at least somewhat intact.
Yeah, because family, extended family is family.
It is. It is.
And it is a good option if we can make it work. And that's one of the areas that Patrick Henry Family Services and Bedford DSS is working together, isn't it?
It is. It is.
So tell us a little bit about kinship navigation.
Kinship navigation is services where we locate family members, reach out to them, help provide them with the resources they need, because most family members extended aren't prepared to just take on a child at a moment's notice, and give them the support they need. Also help them understand the change in the family dynamics, because now they're playing a different role.
Right. Grandparents don't normally plan to raise their grandchildren,
No.
but sometimes they're thrown in that role,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And so what are typically the kinds of support they need?
Financial, a bed, covers, children's clothing, extra food.
So it can be pretty easily needs that can be met.
Yes.
Well, if you're talking about a bed, blankets,
Yeah.
food.
Yes.
All
And,
right.
and Care Portal has been such a blessing to us. I don't even know how many families we've served, but it's a great resource. And if a family's car breaks down, they can't get to the services they need, and we've had you guys help fix a car, and we've gotten a bed from you guys. It's been really wonderful.
Well, let's clarify that. You're actually not getting it from us.
That just
you're
went-
getting it from the community.
That's right, the community churches.
Community churches. Now, we've helped set that up through the
Yes.
technology, and we bring some support to that, but it's
Yes.
actually folks in the community, and that's the power of it, isn't it?
It is, because a lot of times what the families need is that emotional support, and it's the relationship that brings, not so much the material opportunities, but that relationship it provides right up front.
Yeah. Well, we at Patrick Henry believe that the only way to rescue children and keep families safe is through healthy relationships.
Yes.
Right? We have to have programs, and there's got to be resources to support that. But in the end, if we could connect people to healthy relationships, right, in their community, that's more important than anything that we can do as quote professionals. Would you agree with that?
I would, and I always tell the folks that I work with, they get really focused sometimes on the family needs this thing or that thing, and you can pick them up and take them wherever they need to go and give them whatever they need, and if they don't have a relationship to sustain them, they will fail. We've had a father live in a tent and walk everywhere he needed to go to visitations and work, and he got his kids back.
Did he
It was
really?
through community support, and
Wow.
he was able to move out of the tent into an apartment, got a good job, got a vehicle. But it was the relationships that kept him going. It wasn't those things, because
Yeah.
he would have been fine living in a tent, except he didn't have his kids.
Right, and couldn't until probably he was out of the tent, right?
Right.
Wow, what a powerful story. I'm so proud of that guy
It's amazing.
for doing it. But you're right. He would have needed not just physical resources, but all kinds of emotional support. So you can do this, we can do this together, we can get those kids back.
Yes, yes.
Wow, that's beautiful.
And we still hear from him. He's still
Yeah.
doing very well.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you live on those success stories.
We do. They don't occur as often as I'd like for them, but they do occur.
Yeah. Have you ever seen our Vision 30 video?
I have.
You have? Well, we're going to watch it again
Great.
As we take a break. So queuing up now is our Vision 30 Two Rivers video. Let's watch that right now.
Nobody gets to choose their family. If a person is fortunate enough to be born into a healthy family, then life can be much like floating down a smooth, gentle river in the summertime. But an unhealthy family is like a dangerous river, filled with rocks, debris, and fast-moving water. This river swiftly leads to the steep waterfall of adulthood, tragically forming a new river of dysfunction. Even if you aren't born into an unhealthy river, there are many streams that cause a person to get there. But there is only one way to get out, and that is through a meaningful relationship. Across our region, there are many agencies, churches, and families who are devoted to helping children escape from unhealthy rivers. Some feel their role is to wade in and rescue children. They foster, adopt, or provide safe families. Others stand by the river and support the rescuers by providing what they need. Still, others are upstream and stand in the gap to keep children from ending up in the negative situations. At Patrick Henry Family Services, we see ourselves as having an additional role. We are running up and down the shores of the unhealthy river, screaming, "Can't you see the children in the water? You have to do something." Vision 30 is a 10-year initiative. By 2030, we envision a region where all children are safe in their own family, or with caregivers who are supported by a local faith community. So, where do you stand at the river? Are you upstream, keeping families together and strong by standing in the gap? Are you in the river, directly impacting children? Are you on the shore, providing support for the brave folks who have entered the river? Or are you just passing by without noticing? No matter who you are, come down to the river with us. Let us help you find your place. Not only will lives be changed, but you will never be the same.
You know, Kathy, I've seen that probably 100 times, and I still get moved a little bit by that.
Yes, I think it's wonderful.
What part of that rings true for you?
Well, there are people up at the top trying to prevent children from getting into the river, and then there are people dragging them out. And there are just those passersby. And I think sometimes people don't think they can do anything.
Yeah.
But it's amazing just if you're just talking to the child next door and greeting them in the morning or when they go to school or in the afternoon and ask them how their day was. Anybody can play a role. It's that relationship that keeps people going. I think just simple things. It doesn't have to be immense all the time.
That's a good point. If people were just aware of the possibility that there are kids in their neighborhoods, churches, even in their own extended family,
Yes.
right, that may be at risk of child maltreatment, may be hungry, may be lonely, may be vulnerable in a number of ways. A little bit of human kindness and help could go a long way, couldn't it?
It really can, and I think a lot of times we think of them. It's them. It's all of us. All families have hard points that they have to go through, and it's whether or not they have a support system that they can rely on. If they don't have a support system, they're not going to make it. So you can just do a very small act on a regular basis, or even randomly. It can make a big difference.
Yeah. You don't have to be a professional social worker. You don't have to be a counselor. You don't have to, right? A law enforcement worker to help somebody, right?
You don't. Just pay attention and talk to people. Offer them some kindness. Ask them how their day was.
Wow.
Parents are so busy; they don't have the time they need to take care of the children's emotional needs all the time. So we can just step in and be kind. And
Yeah. So let's go to the dark side for just a little bit. So if we become aware and start paying more attention, and we become concerned about the well-being of a child in terms of their safety, what should a citizen do? What should a neighbor do?
well, you should call your local social services and report it. And a lot of people are reluctant to do that because they think we're immediately going to go in there and snatch that child, and we're not. We're first going to make sure it meets the definition of abuse or neglect. There are very strict criteria for that to make sure we protect families' privacy. If it does meet the definition of abuse or neglect, it will be assigned to either a child protective services worker for investigation or to a prevention worker for services. In both of those workers in those roles, the first thing they're going to do is figure out a way to keep that child with the family. Sometimes they might need immediate placement with a family member or a neighbor just to get through that very safe, that very unsafe situation until measures can be put in place. But it's only as a last result that that child will come into foster care.
And that's another way we can work with DSS, both in Bedford and the other surrounding counties, is we have the Safe Families Program,
Yes.
where if there's not extended family where this child can temporarily be while the immediate family is kind of getting things back in shape, they can go to a safe family,
They can.
right? And the nice thing about that program, it's not just about keeping the child safe, it's about helping the family do whatever they need to do in order to keep that child, right?
Yes, it's voluntary. So essentially, the family is driving that car, which gives them a lot of relief, and it gives them time to get themselves together and get into services or whatever they need, knowing that they can have contact with their child. The child is still theirs.
And because it's voluntary, the families don't seem to get in this this conflict with DSS. Or
Correct.
they don't with Safe Families, right? Once you have to do that necessary thing of removing the child, sometimes there's this opposition, right? It's the us
it is.
and them, us versus the government, or us versus DSS. But with Safe Families, it's not reached that point yet.
It
And it's-
hasn't. It
and that's a
hasn't.
valuable space to be in.
It is the best space to be in it if you have to be in a space like that.
Yeah.
Because if they come into care, we've taken their most precious thing from them, and I think it's just human nature. You're going to shut down a little bit, and you really don't have that time that you need to recover from it.
Yeah, that's a good point. You think from the parent's perspective, there's a grief, there's a mourning,
Anger.
going on, anger, right? Denial.
Yes,
all-
bargaining.
bargaining.
It's so sad. It is.
And they don't have the time to work through that in order to get their children back.
No, and same thing with the children.
That's a good point. So through all of this messy mental health stuff that's going on with the family, they got to make a lot of important decisions.
They do.
And if they don't have a support system, it's almost impossible, isn't it?
It is. I mean, trust plays a major role in that. They've got to have somebody they can trust because so much information is going to be thrown at them right from the start, and they just want their child back.
Yeah. So, folks, if you would like to ask a question of our guest today or of myself about the important work of foster care in our community, anything's open for questions, right?
Yes,
Kathy?
yes.
Yeah, anything's open. There's no questions off limit. So type in your questions. Nicolette, who is one of our staff people, said regarding Safe Families for Children, the best space to be in if you have to be in that situation. She quoted you. What a praise to hear that from Miss
Call me Kathy.
all right, from Kathy on behalf of DSS. So she thanks you for that endorsement.
No, I thank you.
So in your 32 years, we were talking a little bit about this before we started the interview. In over 3 decades, you've seen policy changes, you've seen culture changes, you've seen different risk factors develop in a community. What are some of the biggest changes, both in terms of how kids are getting into that negative river, and then the changes, positive changes that are helping them get out?
Well, I'll start with the positive. I think one of the first positive changes was the Adoption and Safe Families Act that came in the 1990s. And it put a timeline in place for foster care and put expectations in place for the care of the children. Children just kind of sat on a shelf in foster care for years and years and years, and there was no push to get them home quickly. And so this set in a timeline that we have to follow. It pushed the goal of return home to the forefront. It made sure workers were visiting children at least monthly, and I don't think that's enough, but at least monthly.
Right. I think folks don't realize that your agency is now on a timeline. As soon as you make that decision that a child has to come out. Am I right to say that that's, 12 to 18 months?
It should be 12,
12.
but it can go to 15 months.
To 15, okay. So that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is in this period of time where the family is both struggling with something that caused the child to go into placement, they're emotionally dealing with all the anger and denial and bargaining, etc. And I understand the law. I agree with you that law is important to keep kids from languishing in it.
Yes.
But boy, a lot of work's got to happen in 12 months.
It does. For foster parents, for parents, a year to 15 months is an extremely long period of time. But when you think about what they have to overcome, substance use, mental health issues, they don't just happen overnight. It takes quite a while to get better.
Right.
But for children, it's even worse because foster parents, their lives change. Sometimes they have to move out into a different state or community, and the kids never know where they're going to be the next day, where they're going to go to school. Their lives are so disrupted.
And for a child, a year can be a life-changing period of time, right? If
Yes.
school's interrupted, trauma has happened, and they'll never get that year back, will they?
They won't. It immediately sets them behind, emotionally and educationally.
Yeah, and so we'll spend a lot of time and resources helping that child
Yes.
try to recover from that. So that says why prevention is so important.
Yes.
Yeah. So while we're on the subject, though, of this policy change that put a limit on it, my understanding of the date is that Virginia, in comparison to other states, does a fairly good job of prevention, right? You have fewer
Yes.
kids coming into the system than a lot of states.
Yes.
But once they're in the system, they tend to languish there longer than they do in other states. What do
They
you
do.
think's going on there, Kathy?
I'm not sure. I think a lot of it depends on what age the child is when they come into the system. I think if they're younger, there's probably going to be a quicker turnaround. When they're older, sometimes the issues are more entrenched.
Particularly for adolescents who may now have behavior issues, right?
Yes, yes,
And those behavior issues could be causing them to be bounced from foster care to foster care,
yes.
or maybe even in a residential treatment until those behaviors settle down, right?
Yes, because people don't understand what's behind them. They're not a bad kid. They're just doing whatever they need to do to survive.
Right. They're expressing it sometimes in the only way they know how.
Yes, and a lot of times when families are falling apart, the hierarchy changes and the child becomes the parent. And that's a hard role to take away when they've had all the decision-making power to make them want to be a child again.
Yeah. So let's talk about how kids are getting into the river. What have you seen over the last 3 decades that has increased maybe the risk of kids being thrown into that other river?
I think the economy. Parents struggle. They have to work so much, and they need a car that functions. They need childcare, and there's not enough childcare. We've seen a lot of children on the autism spectrum disorder come into care. I think they're greatly misunderstood. There aren't the resources for the family to help them understand what's going on and to help them know how to parent that child, because you parent that child differently.
Kathy, I was unaware of that until you said that prior to the interview, that we have kids from the autism spectrum going in. How could an agency like Patrick Henry Family Services respond to make that a better situation for those families?
Well, I was encouraged this morning on your door. There's a poster about a service you're offering, I believe in June, for families with children on the autism spectrum disorder. And I'm so glad, because there really aren't a lot of services in our community.
So I just learned something that we're doing that I didn't realize we were doing. I just work here. I don't know. I'm just the boss.
That's pretty high on my list of we need this right now. So I was really happy to see that.
Well, I'm glad you're encouraged by that. I've been told that we have a couple of questions from Ray Moore, who's over in the Roanoke area. It says, how much help do kinship families get from DSS as compared to like a foster family?
As much as they want and need. Really, it's the same. We will help a family member become a foster parent, and that way they're treated exactly the same. In Bedford, we're fortunate enough, we have a worker who's assigned to kinship only, and she will go out and meet with the family, talk to them about the difference of getting custody straight or fostering to continue to work with the family, or even adoption. She talks to them about the financial resources available to them, helps hook them up with Care Portal if need be, makes home visits, hooks them up with Nicolette, with the family navigation.
Yeah. So what would the advantage be of licensing kinship placement as a foster placement? Is it the finances that would become available to them? What advantage would they have?
Well, the first advantage is that the child knows them, or at least knows of them.
Right, but in terms of the advantage for the family to become a licensed foster care versus just remaining as a kinship placement?
I think they have a worker assigned to them that meets with them regularly and helps them navigate through everything. Certainly the financial resources. Foster care stipend is not a whole lot. People think it's a lot of money out there. It's really not. It helps defray the cost of taking care of that child, not make money on taking care of that child. And I think they have the assurance that they're doing the best that they can to keep that family intact.
So it just would be another step, because as a kinship placement, they're already getting some support
Yes.
from kinship navigation program and from DSS. But if they're a licensed foster family, they're going to get even more support, a little bit more security.
Yes.
In that. Gotcha.
Yes, and it helps them with the parents, because there's that shift in relationship. I mean, that's not comfortable. It can't be comfortable for a family member to be taking care of somebody else's children. So it really helps them get through that.
Okay. Nicolette, so sometimes the smallest actions have the biggest impact. Is there one small action each of us at Patrick Henry Family Services could do that would support Bedford DSS in the hard work you're doing? Good question, Nicolette.
Oh, that is a good question. I'm kind of at a loss, because Patrick Henry Family Services helps us so much. I mean, we need the support, and you give us the emotional support as well as the resources and the encouragement. And you give us the opportunities for the open dialogue about what we need and what can be done. I think if everybody could just think about their people in their community and their families.
Let me ask you if there's a lot of conversation out there in the community about drugs and its impact on the foster care system. Can you speak to that real quickly?
Oh, gosh, yeah. Meth is an awful thing. We have so many children coming into care due to meth. Parents are on meth, grandparents are on meth, whole families are on meth, whole communities. It just spreads like a virus. We even have kids coming in on meth addicted, and it's really difficult to get them away from it once they're in that mess.
Yeah. How does a child get off of meth? I just can't imagine what that's like.
Well, it's immediate, detox. There are residential facilities that help with that. But it's so unfortunate because that gives them an additional battle that they're going to have to fight for the rest of their lives that is unnecessary. That's one of the battles they don't have to have. And I think children go through phases where they experiment and experiment with drugs, and meth can be put into so many different things. They might be smoking a hand-rolled cigarette that has meth in it. They might not know it. I mean, it causes immediate damage.
Just living in a house where that's being used,
It's
whether
toxic.
the child uses it direct or not, has
toxic.
a toxic impact on the child, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. So I was interesting to hear about your beginning into this. You didn't plan to be in
I
this role,
didn't.
did you?
I didn't. It was, I guess
You
you'd
kind
say,
of fell into
serendipity.
it?
It was a happy accident, yes.
A happy accident. You started out in the Peace Corps and ended up kind of preparing you for this, didn't it?
It did. I didn't realize it at the time, but it did. I I went in on a 4-H type program and ended up in kind of a social work program, working with
Wow, about
families
that.
who abused and neglected and didn't realize it and just needed some information and help.
Do you regret that decision?
No, not at all.
Now, come on, Kathy.
Oh, no, there are
There are
days.
days.
Oh, there are days. There are days. Absolutely. Days when you wake up and go, I think I'm going to be sick. But,
no.
but I love it. Sometimes I think I really would like to stay at home. I want to retire. And then I just love it to work with the families and the children and my coworkers.
Yeah. You've got a good team there at Bedford
do.
DSS.
We do.
And a good leader.
Yes, we do.
We're glad to partner with you guys. We're running out of time. I should have asked earlier, do you have questions that you would like to ask? So you have time maybe for one question.
I don't have any questions.
Don't have any questions? All right. Well, it's been a joy having you on, Kathy, and I just thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for the work that you do, and for all the Bedford foster families who have
Yes.
taken some children. Thank you. And for all the kinship families out there, the grandmas and the grandpas and the aunts and the uncles and the cousins and sometimes the older siblings have said yes.
They're the ones doing the real work.
They are.
Golly, yeah.
Yeah. So thank you so much for that. And to the Patrick Henry Family Services staff, thank you for
Yes.
doing what you do in prevention, support,
Yes.
and sometimes even care.
Yes.
Kathy, thank you so much. Staff, would you pray for Kathy and her team today, and all the DSS workers in Lynchburg and surrounding counties that are doing this important work? It's a hard, tough job,
Yes.
but can be rewarding when they're success stories.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks, for joining in with us. Share the video, the link, if you found this helpful. Let's help our community understand the important role that foster care plays in our community. And let's do our part to make not their job easy, but maybe even make it obsolete, right?
Wouldn't that be great?
Well, we wouldn't have to do foster care. You wouldn't be opposed to that, would you?
I would
Kathy?
not. Work me right out of that job.
Amen.
Yes.
Amen. Thank you, folks. We'll see you next week. God bless.
I think camp is a place where barriers can be torn down, where walls come down, and kids can just be who they really are.